Now, the next talk is from Dr. Lynn Newman, who was a nose gunner with the 451st, and it was a very unusual mission in the sense that he will describe, and it kind of explains how some of us survived 35 missions when the average is only about 12 to 13 at that point in time. Lynn, will you tell us about what happened on that very first mission?
Thank you. Up here with no notes, so I won't talk too long probably. A lot of you have already heard my story, so you can go to sleep if you like. A few people that haven't heard it maybe will like it. I had a kind of a whirlwind tour. We left the United States about April 30th of 1944. We ended up in or over 15 countries. We landed in 5 continents. We were on our first mission. We were shot down and we were turned to Turkey all in 15 days. It was kind of exciting, to say the least. We were on a mission to Bucharest for the marshalling yards in Bucharest. And we left our base in Italy and headed on with the Adriatic. Our navigator said, well, we're not on course. We're off course. But there wasn't anything we could do about it because I had radio silence and we had to follow the leader. So we came into the target, and as we were coming into the target, all the rest of the 15th Air Force was leaving with all of the fighter escorts, and our group was coming in, and we had to make the turn and go on the bomb run. So we made the turn and went on the bomb run, and we got our bomb bay doors open, and just about that time, our flight leader dropped back and threw us out of formation, so we were sitting out there like a sitting duck for the German fighters to come in and look at us, and they did. The first pass was a Fokker 190. Came in on a 5 o'clock high and made one pass over the ship, and on the one pass he put a cannon shell on every one of our 4 engines. It didn't hurt the first and the 4th engine, but the 3rd engine, it knocked that out entirely. It put the 2nd engine in, we caught fire. We were able to put the fire out, but the 3rd engine being out, that took care of all of our hydraulic system, which you all know, and so that left us with open bomb bay doors, and the fighters, one ME-109 came in on the tail, and he put 3 cannon shells in the tail turret, and he blew the tail of the gunner right out into the back end of the bay. He put one right into the plexiglass, in the safety glass. It didn't penetrate it, but it shattered the glass, and he put the other 2 in front of one in front of each knee and the lower end of the turret. So the turret was out of commission. The guns would fire, but the turret wouldn't move. We found that out before we got to the target, and that's why they targeted that tail gunner so quickly. Being on the bomb run, we didn't have our ball turret down, and the bomb bay doors were open, so we had one one other Focke-Wulf 190 came in on low on the rear, and he knocked our intercom out. Well, the last thing we heard in the nose was, be ready to bail out, and then that was it. And the pilots were desperate, and they put us into a real steep drive down to 10,000 feet to cloud cover just to get away from the fires. So when they did that, by the third engine, which we had feathered to drop, it came unfeathered and shook the daylights out of us. And Bombardier and Navigator decided that they'd had enough. They heard what the pilot said, and so the Navigator threw all his papers out, all the maps, and then he bailed out through the nose wheel hatch, and the Bombardier waited for me to get out of my turret. When I got out of the turret, then he bailed out through the nose wheel hatch. And I got out, and I got one foot off the nose wheel hatch, and oh gosh, that was cold. I didn't have any shoes. I learned my lesson real quick. Don't wear moccasins inside of your flying boots. Because when I bailed out of the turret, my boots and my moccasins stayed in the turret. Anyhow, I was sitting there and I couldn't get my flak vest off fast enough. And I looked up to the controls, and the pilots were both sitting there, so I pulled my feet in, and I stayed with it. And we pulled out of the dive in about 20,000 or 10,000 feet in the cloud cover, and got away from the fighters. And then we didn't have any maps, and so the pilots got one of the escape kit. They got one of those little cloth maps they had in their escape kit, and see where we were. We were losing altitude slowly, and we were so low we knew we couldn't get back over the mountains in Yugoslavia. So the alternate landing place for us was, at that time, was Turkey, which was a neutral country. So we decided to head for Turkey, and we headed out over the Black Sea, and when we did that, we got over the Black Sea, we jettisoned everything we had in the plane that we could move and to lighten the load. And we stayed in and flew down to Turkey. We happened to come across a half-finished runway. We didn't know it was a half-finished runway, but we saw it looked like a runway. And, we were coming in pretty low, and we didn't have any choice. We decided we were going in there, so we did. And when we went in, we found out it was half-finished. There were wooden blockades all the way down. It was just like 10 pins in a bowling alley. They were flying up every place. But we had enough pressure in the canisters to have a little bit of braking power. We couldn't close the Bombay doors, of course, and the engineer and I had to roll the wheels down by hand. He stood in the Bombay rolling it down, and I had to stay in front to hold him up while he was in the Bombay, so he didn't fall out. We got the wheels down, and he and I went up the nose, and we kicked the nose wheel down, so we were able to land with all three wheels, and we got on the runway fine. Went down the end of it, found out it wasn't completed. We went off the end into the mud, which was fine. That stopped us real quick. And we got out of the plane, and here was, we looked out, and we're right in the middle of an army camp. Here's the army camp, and up on the hills, a cannon pointing down at us. And a whole troop of Turkish soldiers were up there on horseback. And they all came down to greet us, and they didn't speak English, we didn't speak Turkish, and we finally made contact enough that they could see that we were Americans, and they treated us pretty decent. He took us into headquarters and kept us there for a while. And they served us nice hot tea, delicious tea. Oh, that was good tea. Never found any more that are like that. After we had tea there, they brought in some army trucks. Actually, they were American-made army trucks, which the Turkish army were using. They loaded us on those and took us into Istanbul. We were in I don't know, right in downtown Istanbul, up on the hill, and they kept us there for about 3 or 4 days. And when we got in there, well, they took us in, and we were interviewed interrogated by a Turkish general, and we sat in his office, and he offered us some fresh bread and some cheese, and oh gosh, that sounded good. Well, we had an army private who was taking charge of us because he could speak English, and obviously he was probably part of the military intelligence of the Turkish army, but he took me down. I asked if I wanted to go down. I went with him. We went down and to get a loaf of bread. We walked down there, and here's this little room, not very big, but it's got wooden barricades across the front of it to keep the bread in, and it's filled full of these round loaves of bread, and there's a Turkish army man standing in there in his bare feet, and he was handing the bread out to us. He was standing on the bread, and he was handing it out to us to take up to the general's office. But it was tasted awful good, even though he had his bare feet in it. But he got used to things like that in a hurry when we were over there in Istanbul. A few other little items. The restrooms for the whole camp were a tunnel carved out, a cave carved out the side of the mountain, and it was just water running through it steady all the time from a stream, and that was the restroom. We were given a quick tour of several of the mosques and other things in Istanbul, and then the military major from the United States Army came and picked us up, and he took us out to meet the president of the American College of Beirut, and we went to his home and had tea with him and in our old sloppy, dirty uniforms that we were wearing. It was quite a real treat for us to get there and see what he had to offer for us, and he gave us some of the history of where they was and all. Then they took us back to camp, and they were going to send us to Ankara, and to do that, they didn't want anybody to know we were there and leaving, so they kept us in until dark, and then they loaded us on a train to go to Ankara. Well, everybody in Istanbul knew we were there, and knew where we were going and who we were with and everything else about us. But we went to Ankara, and it was the same deal. When we got off the train there, nobody was supposed to know we were there, and the officer in charge in Ankara came over and brought us some used civilian clothes, which previous internees had used, and we had to pick out something that would fit us. And then they sent us up to a restaurant in Ankara, where they advised us to eat. Now, we didn't receive any pay at all, but they gave us enough money to buy our meals at this restaurant in Ankara. It happened to be the nicest restaurant in the whole city of Ankara, and probably one of the nicest ones in Turkey. So we were very happy to eat there. We went in and they already had a table reserved for us, and we ate at that same table every day while we were there. The waiters couldn't speak English, but one of our waiters could speak a little French, and myself could understand a little French and read a little bit on the menu, so we made out pretty good there. But we found out in this restaurant, on one side of the restaurant were the Allies. On the other side of the restaurant were the Axis. Down to the middle of the restaurant were Turkish diplomats. One day while we were there, the German, I can't remember his name, not von Ribbentrop, but he was a German ambassador at that time. He was there for lunch. We had a very nice gypsy band that played every night while we were eating, and we had it was really a hard thing to do to go to that restaurant and eat in there. All this fine food they had for us. We got out of there, and they were going to send us out. We were supposed to stay there for the duration of the war, but since the Americans were a little bit ahead of things at that time, why, they got us out early. And they got us out. We were there for a few weeks. I don't remember exactly how long. Not too long. They got us out, and 4 of us went by train down to Adana, which is on the coast of Turkey in the Mediterranean Sea. And we flew out by military aircraft from there to Cairo. And the other members, the 2 pilots and 2 crewmen went by train a long way around through Syria and all of the other countries there. We went through Israel, Syria, and whatever other countries are out there now. And they ended up in Cairo, but we've been there first. I've been in Algiers, but we've been to Cairo for 3 days, and we were interrogated there. We were under the umbrella of the military intelligence for the rest of our career until we were relieved in the United States. We met the rest of the crew in Algiers after we'd been there about a week, and then we took a plane from there to a place on Oran, and they had us out in the desert in Oran. It was a big army distribution center, but they didn't want us associating with any of the rest of the army. We were just coming over to go join forces in Europe. So they didn't want us to talk to them, so they kept us out in the desert in tents, and we stayed out there for about a week, I guess, something like that. And we were allowed to come in and take a shower once or twice while we were there, but we were only allowed to come in under guard and when no one else was in the area when we were taking showers, and we weren't allowed to communicate with any of the people there. So we stayed there for a while, and we were all set to come back home. and they postponed our trip home. Well, we didn't know what was going on. We were all ready to get on board an old Liberty ship or whatever they were and come on home. Well, it happened to be that this was the day of the invasion, and we didn't know anything about it. We were stuck there in Iran waiting to get aboard ship, and we were stuck there for an extra couple, 3 days until the invasion was over. We thought they were going into France because we knew there had been a lot of troops going into France down into that area, but we found out otherwise, obviously. So we boarded the Liberty ship and got in a convoy and spent about 2 weeks coming home in the convoy. So I was back home in the United States on July 4th, 1944. So it was really a long, hard tour for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. You know, there's the saying, you'd rather be lucky than good. And when our individual gunners arrived at Charleston, South Carolina for crew assignment, 2 of us were 18 years old, and a third one, Andy, was 19. And lo and behold, we were assigned to probably the best pilot in the whole Air Force, as far as we were concerned. He was 35 years of age. He had been training pilots, and his name was Gerald Hopkins, captain no less, Gerald Hopkins. So this mere happening proved to be to our best interest on numerous occasions. When we arrived in Tunis, it was dusk. We were about out of fuel, and there was a raging storm going on at that location, across the airfield. Captain Hopkins brought that plane in those conditions, and we had a broken nose wheel. That was it. Now today, Little Jones, named by Captain Hopkins, and myself, Big Jones, Little Jones and Andy could not attend because of health. But we have with us today Captain Hopkins' daughter, Jeanette Laxton. And Jeanette, it's so nice to have you with us.